I'd like to start by talking a little bit about style, since we're getting into units on using style to analyze YouTube videos, and we'll later use talk about using different style manuals to revise your writing. And I guess the way I'd like to talk about what I mean by style, at least for the purposes of the class, is I'd like to first begin by talking about what I don't think it means. Again, just in terms of what we'll be talking about here. First, not style number one is that everyone has their own style. This idea that you have your style, I have my style, we're all individuals and that kind of thing. I don't think that's true for any number of different reasons. One example I'd like to give is fashion. I think that people tend to dress in a fashion of clothing that identifies with different kinds of groups. High school kids dress differently from college kids, dress differently from people who work in offices. It's always interesting to me to see new students on campus because the way that first year students dress and the way that fourth year or graduate students dress always strikes me as subtly different. Men in different dress in different ways and so forth. People break those conventions, of course, but when they break the conventions, they're making some sort of commentary on it, which again implies that it's a shared sort of convention. Another example is saying that style, everyone's entitled to their own style, is like saying that everyone's entitled to their own opinion, which is not true because opinions only have value to the extent that they're shared. If you were alone on a desert island, your opinion about where to build the shelter wouldn't matter. You would just build it wherever you wanted. On the other hand, if you were on the island with a bunch of people, like the people who crashed on Lost, you'd have an argument about this. You'd have, some people would be of the opinion that you build it, build the shelter by the ocean. Some people the opinion, but you build it by the lake. But the point is that the extent to which an opinion matters is the extent to which it's shared with other people. Same sort of thing with style. The extent to which it matters is the extent to which it's shared with others. Not style number two. Style rules restrict my creativity. You're hemming me in with all these rules. Oh no. Well, that's not really true either. It's a cliche, but it's kind of true. In order to learn how to write effectively, you've got to know how to rule. You got to know the rules to break them. In other words, you have to start by understanding what the conventions are before you can just start experimenting and making up rules as you go along. Rules also define what's creative. Think about this in terms of games. It's the Michael Jordan or other insert your favorite basketball player here was a creative and innovative basketball player because he played within the rules of the game. He wasn't making up his new rules. And if we don't have rules, then we end up with something along the lines of Calvin Ball. I don't know if you remember Calvin and Hobbes, but this was a running bit in the comics that they had where literally Calvin and his imaginary friend, the stuffed tiger Hobbes, would make up a game as they go along, and every time they would keep changing the rules. Now that's awfully fun if you're a child playing a game with an imaginary friend, but it's not really something that really translates well in the real world. Not style number three. It doesn't matter because good writing is good writing and good style is good style. Why are you harping all this stuff about style and everything? It just doesn't matter. Well, listen, that's just so not true. And whatever you do, don't leave class thinking that good style is good. Good writing is good writing. Good style is good style. This is demonstrably true by just the sort of way that we write certain ways for certain purposes and goals. I mean, you wouldn't write a poem if you were applying for a job, would you? You wouldn't send a letter to your business that said, "Oh, how I would like to have a job at your place of business." You wouldn't do that, right? So there's conventions of these things, and so no, good writing, a really really good poem does not make a really really good application letter. So good writing is not good writing. Good style is not good style. Okay, so this begs the question: well, what is style? Well, what we'll be talking about here is first of how style is one of the five canons or parts of rhetoric. We'll get into this in a little bit more detail next week when we start talking about the selection from Deborah Haughey and Sharon Crowley in their book, which is specifically about style. The Greeks and the Romans, and that's what they're talking about. They're analyzing ancient style in contemporary conditions. The Greeks and Romans divided up style in tons of different ways and applied tons of different definitions and tautologies, if you will, to different parts of style. So that's one thing we'll be talking about. The idea that style is just about correct writing is actually something that comes later. Also something we'll talk about when we get to talking about the style manuals. Style is how you write or say something depending on what it is you're writing or saying and what it is you're trying to accomplish. If you're trying to get your parents to loan you the car, my guess is that you would take a different kind of approach to presenting that question to them than you might present it if you were texting or talking to your friends about going to the bar. Chances are, these would be different stylistic conversations. Style also depends on the technologies you use to present your message. If you're writing a letter to someone on a piece of paper with a pen, there are certain things that you would do differently than you would do if you were texting someone or emailing someone. So, these are the two main constraints that I want to, or the three main constraints, I guess, that it's about purpose, it's about audience, and it's about the tools that you're using. Now, before we leave here, couple pieces of advice in the next two style units, because the next two units involve some reading that can be kind of complicated. Sharon Crowley and Deborah Hawley's reading, and Joseph Williams' book style, A Lesson Toward Clarity and Grace. The Strunk and White reading is pretty easy, sandwiched in between the two of those things, but some of these other things are going to be a little bit more time consuming. So my first piece of advice is you really need to do the reading. And my second piece of advice is, no, seriously, you really need to do the reading. If you don't do the reading for these units very carefully and closely, you will not do very well on them. I can tell you that right now from past experience. Spend some extra time, ask some questions, and as you're reading through these things, think about your own writing and how maybe you can glean some different pieces of advice from, especially the style manuals when we get to that after the unit on YouTube. But both also in Crowley and Haughey, also in that reading as well. Think of what you can glean from these readings to actually improve your own writing as well.